"You're not going to touch her again." The words cut through the low hum of the bar like a sudden storm. I froze mid-step, my glass trembling in my hand, the faint scent of spilled coffee and amber liquor mixing in the air. Outside, the neon signs flickered against the wet pavement, reflecting off puddles that mirrored the chaos inside me. Emily Carter had just laughed at a joke from the bartender, unaware that someone's hand had grazed her waist as he passed behind her, a brief touch that sent a jolt of discomfort through her. I saw it immediately, the subtle shift in her body, the sudden hesitation in her laugh. Liam Drake was already moving, long strides cutting through the crowd with measured intent, every motion precise, controlled, radiating authority that made the bar seem smaller, the noise quieter, as if the room had been filtered through his gaze. His hand shot out, gripping the wrist of the man who dared, firm but not aggressive, the pressure enough to signal finality. Emily's green eyes widened, a flicker of confusion mixed with relief, and I could see her heart racing in tiny, visible increments. The man stammered, caught between embarrassment and fear, and Liam's voice, low and cold, carried across the small distance, repeating, "That's the last time." A subtle pause hung, thick with unspoken understanding. The bar's ambient chatter, the clinking of glasses, all seemed to recede as Liam's presence pressed forward, dominant, undeniable. Emily's pulse quickened not just from the interruption, but from the clarity of safety that radiated from him, a promise that the unpredictable world around her suddenly had boundaries. Her shoulder brushed his sleeve ever so slightly as she instinctively stepped back, yet the motion was brief, respectful, an acknowledgment of authority without needing words. Outside, the rain started again, a light patter against the windows, a rhythmic reminder of the night's ongoing uncertainty, the cold air mixing with the warmth of human proximity in the room. Liam's eyes, a piercing shade of storm blue, scanned the rest of the room, his gaze calculating, protective, every detail of the environment catalogued in the instant, from the bartender polishing a glass to the flicker of the neon reflecting in Emily's worried expression. Her breath caught subtly, shallow and fast, and I felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly as the initial shock subsided. In that moment, the mundane chaos of a Friday night bar became a stage for a quiet display of control, a microcosm of unspoken rules and hierarchies that only Liam commanded. Every small gesture, the tilt of his head, the flex of his fingers on the other man's wrist, the measured way he exhaled, was a statement, an unbreakable contract of protection and ownership that Emily recognized without words, a truth that sank into her very core. I could see her lips part slightly as she whispered, almost inaudibly, "Who is he?" And though no immediate answer came, the subtle shift in Liam's stance, the soft tightening of his jaw, the controlled flare of his nostrils, all spoke volumes. He was the silent anchor in the storm, the unmovable presence that redefined her immediate world, turning a simple touch into a moment suspended in tension and awareness, the rest of the bar fading into irrelevance as Emily's gaze followed every imperceptible movement, every calculated breath, until the night itself seemed to hinge on this one encounter. The bar had settled back into its usual rhythm, the soft hum of conversation blending with the faint clatter of glassware, but the air around Emily still felt charged, each heartbeat echoing like a drum in her chest. She moved toward the counter, careful to keep her hands steady, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface, grounding herself against the lingering adrenaline. Liam walked beside her, his presence close yet not imposing, a quiet reassurance that was almost tangible. The faint scent of rain and asphalt from the street outside mingled with the warm, earthy aroma of brewed coffee and polished wood, creating a strange but comforting blend. Emily stole a glance at him, noting the sharp line of his jaw, the controlled precision in his posture, the way his dark blue eyes scanned the room with measured intent, and she realized that every subtle movement of his, every calculated step, conveyed a message she did not yet fully understand. They reached the corner of the bar where a small table awaited, and Liam gestured toward it, his hand steady, commanding without a word. Emily nodded, her pulse still elevated, the warmth in her chest a mix of lingering tension and the unexpected calm that came from knowing someone was looking out for her. She lowered herself onto the seat, smoothing the fabric of her jacket, her eyes never leaving his as he moved to stand slightly ahead, alert and aware of the environment, noting exits, angles, and people in the vicinity with a silent efficiency that seemed almost instinctual. The bartender approached, offering a glass of water, and Emily accepted it with a slight nod, the cool liquid sliding down her throat, easing some of the tightness in her chest. Liam did not sit but remained vigilant, his gaze sweeping the bar, catching details that most would miss, the subtle shifts in posture, the faint glances exchanged between patrons, all catalogued in his mind without interrupting the flow of the moment. Emily felt herself relax slightly, the tension in her shoulders loosening, her breath evening out, though a heightened awareness lingered, a residual alertness that she could not entirely shake. The hum of the bar became a background rhythm, a contrast to the heightened focus of her senses, the faint reflection of neon lights on polished surfaces catching her eye, small visual cues that grounded her in the reality of the space. Liam shifted his weight slightly, a minimal gesture, but one that carried an unspoken message of presence, control, and attentiveness, and Emily found herself responding to it unconsciously, adjusting her own posture, aligning subtly with the calm authority he radiated. Outside, the rain had picked up, drumming against the windows in a steady cadence, a soothing counterpoint to the lingering tension, and the soft lighting inside the bar reflected off the surfaces, casting gentle shadows that moved with the people around her. Emily's thoughts began to settle, a quiet clarity forming as she recognized the unspoken protection and the subtle assertion of boundaries, the way Liam's movements communicated a silent contract of safety, attentiveness, and control. Each subtle motion, each glance, each calculated breath formed a language that spoke directly to her, a reassurance that the night was being watched over, that she was being seen, and that in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, there was someone whose presence offered stability, a steadying anchor in the ebb and flow of the evening. The moment stretched, elongated by awareness and attention, a microcosm of control and understanding, the kind of calm that felt rare and unspoken, yet entirely present, shaping the rhythm of the night, and Emily felt a cautious trust begin to take root, a sense that while the world outside remained unpredictable, within this space, she was accounted for, observed, and quietly, undeniably, respected. The rain outside intensified, tapping against the windows in a steady rhythm that matched the subtle quickening of Emily's heartbeat. She kept her hands wrapped around the glass of water on the table, feeling the cool condensation seep through her fingers, grounding her in the moment. Liam remained standing beside her, his posture unwavering, surveying the room with eyes that missed nothing, every patron, every movement, catalogued and noted with silent precision. Emily's mind traced the contours of the space, the polished wood floors reflecting the soft glow of overhead lights, the muted clinks of glasses, the gentle conversations that now seemed distant under the weight of awareness Liam brought into the room. She could feel the slight pull of anxiety in her chest, a residue from earlier, and the subtle relief of knowing someone was watching over her. Liam shifted slightly, a measured motion that communicated vigilance without intrusion, and Emily felt an unspoken assurance settle over her. Her thoughts wandered to the moments earlier, the hand on her waist, the firm but controlled grip he had placed on the other man's wrist, and she realized how quickly the atmosphere had shifted, the bar now a space defined less by its patrons and more by the presence of someone whose awareness extended beyond the immediate scene. She caught the glimmer of his watch, the tailored cut of his jacket, the subtle way he exhaled, a controlled rhythm that seemed to organize the chaos around him. Emily's gaze lingered on him, noting the calm authority, the ease with which he occupied the space, and the quiet but undeniable strength that radiated from his stance. The subtle sounds of the bar, the shuffling of feet, the low murmur of conversation, became a backdrop, secondary to the rhythm of awareness and attentiveness that Liam commanded. Emily took a slow breath, noticing how her shoulders loosened, the tension ebbing just enough to allow her to sense the space without fear, the contrast between the brief alarm earlier and the present quiet creating a suspended moment of clarity. Liam's eyes moved briefly toward the door, then back to the room, cataloging every detail, every potential shift, the the subtle awareness a constant undercurrent of protection. Emily adjusted in her seat, shifting slightly to meet his gaze, sensing the acknowledgment of her awareness, the subtle interplay of attention. That required no words. The rain continued its steady percussion against the glass, the light catching droplets like tiny prisms, reflecting across the room in patterns that seemed to slow time, creating a space where every subtle motion, every glance, and every calculated breath took on meaning. She noted the way the chairs were arranged, the slight tilt of the bar stools, the reflection of her own green eyes in the polished surfaces, and the gentle reassurance of Liam's presence beside her. The moment felt elongated, suspended between the past tension and a present clarity, a calm awareness that was both protective and commanding. Emily recognized the careful attention, the unspoken promise, the way he shaped the space and perception without ever needing to speak, and she felt a cautious trust begin to settle, a sense that the night, while unpredictable, had a center of stability and control, and that she was, for the moment, quietly accounted for and observed, every motion noted, every breath acknowledged, in the steady, unwavering presence that Liam maintained. Emily shifted slightly in her seat, the soft leather of the chair pressing against her legs, and she felt the faint thrum of the bar beneath her, a low vibration that synchronized with the subtle rhythm of her own heartbeat. Liam remained just a few feet away, his presence a constant, quiet tension in the air, his dark eyes sweeping the room with a calm efficiency that made it impossible for anything to go unnoticed. She followed his gaze without thinking, catching the way he noted the angles of the tables, the slight sway of the ceiling fan above, and even the small reflection of neon signs on the polished surfaces, details that grounded the room in a way she could not have anticipated. The rain outside had softened to a steady drizzle, streaking the windows in thin, irregular lines, each droplet catching the light and scattering it into faint prisms across the floor. Emily sipped the water in front of her, the cold liquid sliding down her throat, and allowed herself a brief moment of reflection, aware that the tension from earlier had begun to dissolve, leaving a space of cautious awareness and curiosity. Liam moved slightly, a minimal gesture that conveyed attentiveness, and she noticed the subtle flex of his hand as he adjusted his stance, the controlled weight distribution of his body conveying a readiness that was both reassuring and commanding. Her green eyes followed him, noting the lines of his jaw, the way his shoulders held a quiet strength, and the meticulous way he observed the surroundings, cataloging everything with an unspoken precision that felt protective, almost intentional. The hum of the bar had returned, conversations blending into a soft background murmur, the clinking of glasses forming a rhythm that matched the distant patter of rain on the windows, creating an oddly soothing environment despite the heightened awareness that still lingered. Emily found herself breathing more evenly, the tension in her muscles loosening just enough to allow her to take in the space fully, to notice the warmth of the wooden counter, the gentle sway of the chairs as patrons shifted in their seats, the faint aroma of roasted coffee beans mingling with the scent of polished wood and rain-soaked streets outside. Liam's gaze shifted briefly toward her, the intensity of his attention softening just enough to convey reassurance, a subtle acknowledgment that he had taken notice of her reactions, of the way she measured the space and the atmosphere. She felt a quiet curiosity stir, a sense of intrigue about the man who moved with such precision and command, whose presence had reshaped the dynamics of the room without a single word being exchanged. Outside, the city continued its rhythmic pulse, cars gliding through wet streets, headlights reflecting off puddles, the world moving with a continuity that contrasted with the suspended clarity of the moment inside the bar. Emily allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile, the tension in her chest replaced by a calm attentiveness, an awareness of the subtle interplay of observation and protection that Liam brought into her immediate environment, a recognition that in this space, she was seen, accounted for, and quietly safeguarded. Each detail, from the soft echo of footsteps to the nuanced shifts in Liam's posture, resonated with a sense of stability and measured control, creating a moment where the ordinary and the exceptional intersected, a brief pause in the ongoing rhythm of the night, leaving Emily with a heightened awareness of presence, attention, and quiet command. Emily's fingers tapped lightly against the surface of the table, tracing invisible patterns as her mind replayed the earlier moments, the subtle authority Liam had projected, the measured precision in every gesture. The low hum of the bar surrounded her, blending with the soft clinks of glassware and the faint shuffle of patrons moving between tables, yet it all seemed distant, filtered through the lens of heightened awareness that Liam's presence imposed. She noticed the gentle tilt of his head as he scanned the room again, the shadowed lines of his face catching the warm ambient light, the faint reflection of neon signs dancing across the polished wood surfaces. Her green eyes followed him instinctively, aware of how he had mapped the room, calculated trajectories, anticipated reactions, and yet remained unobtrusive, a subtle tension in his posture that communicated readiness without intimidation. The drizzle outside painted streaks of light across the window panes, the steady rhythm almost hypnotic, echoing the quiet pulse in her own chest, each drop marking time in a night that had shifted so quickly from ordinary to charged with unspoken significance. Emily adjusted her position in the chair, noting how the soft leather molded slightly beneath her, grounding her in the moment, her thoughts tracing the contours of the space, the interplay of shadow and light, the subtle changes in ambient sound, and the faint scent of rain mixed with the earthy aroma of coffee and polished wood. Liam moved a fraction closer, his presence enveloping without pressure, a silent anchor that seemed to organize the room around him, every gesture deliberate, every shift of weight purposeful. Emily drew in a slow breath, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease, her awareness heightening in tandem with a cautious curiosity, the contrast between the brief alarm earlier and the measured calm, now creating a suspended clarity. The bar's conversations formed a low, steady background, the rhythmic footfalls of servers and patrons providing a cadence that matched the soft percussion of raindrops against the windows, each sound layering over the other to create a subtle symphony of ordinary life refracted through extraordinary attention. Emily allowed her eyes to follow the subtle movements, the flicker of Liam's gaze toward a server placing a tray, the precise way he observed every detail without comment, the effortless control he maintained over the atmosphere, and she felt a quiet reassurance settle over her, a sense of protective presence that did not need words. The faint warmth from the overhead lighting contrasted with the cool dampness from outside, and Emily noticed the slight rise and fall of Liam's chest as he breathed, a controlled rhythm that mirrored the subtle steadiness he imposed on the environment. Every small motion, every carefully placed footstep, every moment of attentive silence contributed to a shared understanding, a choreography of awareness and respect that she felt keenly, absorbing the scene through a mixture of intuition and observation. Her heartbeat slowed, synchronized in a peculiar way with the measured pace of his attentiveness, the soft reflection of light across surfaces creating fleeting patterns that seemed to signal permission to relax without letting guard down. In that space, amid the ordinary noises and movements, Emily recognized the careful balance Liam maintained between observation, protection, and control, a presence that shaped her perception, lent an unspoken security, and allowed her to exist fully in the room, aware of every nuance, every shift, and every subtle current of tension that Liam's attention both mitigated and magnified. The soft patter of rain outside continued to frame the evening, a gentle rhythm against the windows that mirrored the steady pulse of the bar inside. Emily took another slow breath, the warmth of the glass in her hands grounding her as she allowed her gaze to drift across the room, noting the interplay of shadows and light, the subtle movements of patrons as they shifted in their seats or whispered in low tones. Liam remained at her side, a constant presence whose eyes never missed a detail, tracking the ebb and flow of the environment with a quiet precision that seemed effortless. She observed the careful way he positioned himself, the slight flex of his shoulders as he adjusted his weight, a posture that communicated alertness without intrusion, authority without overt dominance. The bar lights cast a soft glow on his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the faint shadow under his cheekbones, and the subtle glint in his storm blue eyes as he scanned the space, noting exits, patrons, and even the subtle changes in the reflection of neon on the polished surfaces. Emily's own awareness sharpened in response, her senses attuning to the small details she might have overlooked. The rhythm of the bartender's movements, the gentle clatter of utensils, the murmur of conversation blending into a soft background hum, and the distant, almost imperceptible creak of the floorboards beneath shifting chairs. She felt the tension in her chest ease slightly, replaced by a curious attentiveness, a subtle recognition that Liam's vigilance created a space of both protection and clarity, a place where observation and presence combined to form a quiet but undeniable control. Outside, droplets slid down the windows in thin, refracted lines, catching stray beams of light and scattering them across the bar in fleeting prisms, a reminder of the world beyond and the steady continuity of the night. Emily shifted her hands lightly on the table, feeling the coolness of the glass, the gentle vibration of the surface beneath her fingertips, and she noted the way Liam's gaze flicked to her, just long enough to communicate acknowledgment and reassurance without a word. The soft sound of rain mingled with the low hum of conversation, creating a rhythm that felt almost meditative, a backdrop for the subtle interplay of awareness, attention, and silent communication that passed between them. Emily found herself breathing more evenly, her muscles relaxing just enough to feel the contours of the chair, the smooth surface of the table, the gentle ebb of human presence around her, and yet a heightened consciousness remained, tuned to the careful calibration of Liam's presence, the way he shaped the perception of the room, and the quiet, persistent assurance that she was seen, accounted for, and safeguarded in the simplest yet most profound of ways. Every small gesture, the tilt of his head, the soft adjustment of his stance, the measured exhalation, formed a language of presence and protection that she could understand instinctively, a rhythm of control that allowed her to exist fully within the moment, aware of the environment, attuned to his attentiveness, and quietly reassured by the unwavering steadiness of his attention. The subtle glow from the overhead lights cast a warm sheen across the bar, illuminating the slight ripples in the dark wood surfaces and the soft reflection in the glassware, a contrast to the steady drizzle outside that blurred the city streets into streaks of silver and neon. Emily shifted in her chair, the leather creaking faintly beneath her, fingers tracing the cool edge of the table as she tried to process the current quiet, the calm that seemed almost too deliberate, as if the room itself was being measured and accounted for. Liam stood just behind her, the edge of his jacket brushing the back of her chair ever so slightly, a reminder of his constant presence, his eyes scanning the bar with a quiet intensity that suggested he could anticipate any shift in movement, any change in the energy of the room. Emily noticed the subtle way he adjusted his weight, the careful distribution that spoke to readiness, control, and attention without needing to speak, a choreography of presence that set the rhythm of the space without imposing upon it. The soft murmur of conversations and the faint clinking of glasses faded slightly against the hum of awareness that Liam projected, the gentle cadence of rain against the windows reinforcing the sense of measured continuity that permeated the air. Emily took a slow, steadying breath, feeling the slight tension in her chest ease, a delicate mixture of relief and heightened alertness that left her mind clear and focused. She observed the small, deliberate motions of Liam as he shifted his stance, his fingers flexing lightly, the controlled exhale that punctuated his silent evaluation of the environment, and she realized that every movement, every glance, every minimal gesture contributed to a sense of protection that enveloped her without ever imposing. Outside, the streets shimmered with wet reflections of streetlights and neon signs, each passing car casting brief streaks of light across the room, reminders of the world beyond, chaotic yet ordered in its constant motion. Emily adjusted slightly in her seat, noticing the gentle creak of the floor beneath her and the faint vibration through the soles of her shoes, details that grounded her in the physical reality of the moment while her mind absorbed the layers of observation and awareness surrounding her. Liam's gaze shifted subtly to follow her movements, a precise acknowledgment that she was accounted for, the kind of silent communication that required no words, yet spoke volumes. The warmth from the overhead lighting brushed against her skin, the cool glass beneath her fingers, the muted background noise of the bar, and the rhythmic percussion of rain combined to create a suspended moment in which every sense was heightened, yet strangely at ease. Emily's attention flickered between the small details, the subtle shift of his shoulders, the glint of his watch catching a stray beam of light, the controlled pace of his breathing, and the broader rhythm of the space, a quiet harmony of observation, protection, and presence that she recognized instinctively. Feeling the edges of her own awareness expand to match the silent, commanding stability Liam brought to the room. A measured assurance that the night, while unpredictable, held within it a steady, unspoken order that she could trust. The bar had grown quieter as the night deepened, the steady drizzle outside casting faint streaks of silver across the windows, reflections dancing across the dark polished wood and the subtle glint of glassware. Emily leaned slightly forward, the warmth of her hands around the cool glass grounding her as she allowed herself to notice the small details of the space, the way the light fell in soft patterns across the tables, the gentle hum of conversation now reduced to intermittent murmurs, and the occasional shuffle of chairs and footsteps on the floor. Liam remained a few steps behind, his presence steady, his posture precise, surveying the room with a quiet vigilance that gave the space a sense of structure and order, every movement intentional, every glance purposeful. Emily followed the rhythm of his attention, her green eyes catching the subtleties he registered, the slight sway of a patron, the brief reflection of neon light in a mirror, the movement of a server balancing a tray. Details that created an intricate map of awareness, protective yet unobtrusive. The rain intensified briefly, each droplet tracing patterns along the glass, creating a backdrop of gentle percussion that blended seamlessly with the muted background noise of the bar. Emily felt a calm attentiveness settle over her, a mixture of curiosity and cautious awareness. As she adjusted her position in the chair, the leather shifting softly beneath her, and she noted the careful precision of Liam's stance, the subtle flex of his hands, the controlled rhythm of his breathing, all conveying an unspoken readiness that enveloped her in a quiet, unspoken security. Her pulse, once a rapid echo of tension, slowed just enough to allow for a heightened clarity, her senses attuned to the environment in a way that mirrored Liam's own calculated observation. The soft glow of light above highlighted the contours of his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the slight tilt of his head as he scanned the room, and Emily found herself taking in these details with an awareness that was equal parts fascination and relief. She felt the warmth of the bar, the steady vibration of footsteps around her, the faint scent of coffee mingling with the lingering dampness from outside, and the subtle interplay of light and shadow created a moment suspended in time. A microcosm of presence, attention, and quiet command. Liam's gaze shifted briefly toward her, a flicker of acknowledgment that required no words, the kind of silent communication that spoke volumes in its subtlety, assuring her that she was accounted for, seen, and protected without a single overt action. Emily's breath evened, the slight tension in her shoulders eased, and she allowed herself to fully inhabit the space, attuned to the rhythm of the room, the protective awareness Liam provided, and the quiet sense of order that transformed the ordinary environment into a space where she felt considered, observed, and quietly safe. Each nuanced movement, each carefully measured glance, and the gentle cadence of his presence created a stable framework within which she could exist, moving with awareness, absorbing details, and recognizing the unspoken control that defined the evening, shaping every perception, every interaction, and every subtle shift in energy within the bar.